Imagine a country where you can legally marry a dead lover, where a king's reign vanishes in 20 minutes, where the guillotine claimed its final victim the year Star Wars lit up cinema screens. Unbelievable! These are just 3 of the 20 wild facts about France that sound too bizarre to be true. And each one reveals a hidden, extraordinary side to the nation you thought you knew. 20 facts. So why does France lead the world in laws, legends, and sheer unpredictability? Let's dive right into the most unbelievable stories behind the headlines. In France, love can outlast even death, and the law makes it official. This is a legal exception. Since 1959, it has been possible to marry someone who has already died, but only with the personal approval of the French president. The tradition began after the Malpasset Dam disaster, when Irene Jodart lost her fiancé André Capra in the flood that killed more than 400 people. Grieving but determined, she petitioned President Charles de Gaulle for the right to become André's widow. The law, now Article 171 of the Civil Code, requires proof of true intent, letters, wedding plans, and the support of both families. The ceremony is solemn, with the deceased's photo standing in for the absent spouse. Each year, only about 10 to 25 people apply, and most are turned away. Those who succeed do not gain inheritance rights, but they do gain recognition of a bond that tragedy could not erase. French law is not the only place where the extraordinary becomes reality. In 1830, the throne of France changed hands in the blink of an eye. Following a revolution that forced Charles X to abdicate, his son Louis-Antoine became Louis XIX, King of France, for just 20 minutes. As the ink dried on his father's abdication at the Château de Rambouillet, pressure from revolutionaries and his own family mounted. Louis XIX surrendered the crown almost immediately, signing away his title in favor of his young nephew. The entire monarchy unraveled in the space of a coffee break, leaving behind a record for the shortest reign in French history. In France, even the impossible can find its place in the law books or the history books. At dawn on September 10, 1977, a heavy wooden blade fell for the last time in France. Hamida Djandoubi, convicted of a brutal crime, became the final person executed by guillotine, not just in France, but in all of Western Europe. The scene unfolded behind the walls of Baumet's prison in Marseille, while the outside world was waking up to the age of Star Wars and disco. The contrast was jarring. A centuries-old machine, invented in the name of progress, still at work in the late 20th century. The guillotine story is tangled with irony. Its namesake, Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin, never built the device and spent his life fighting for a more humane justice system. He proposed a single, swift method as an alternative to the gruesome spectacles that once separated nobles from commoners. His hope was to make executions rare, equal, and quick. Instead, his name became forever linked to the blade he hoped would end suffering, not prolong it. After Djandoubi's execution, debate swelled. Newspapers like Le Monde ran headlines calling the event a national anachronism. The Ministry of Justice faced mounting pressure as public opinion shifted. 4 years later, in October 1981, the National Assembly voted to abolish the death penalty. France's last executioner packed away his tools, and the guillotine was retired for good. What began as a symbol of modern mercy ended as a relic, out of step with the world it once sought to reform. Deep beneath the streets of Paris, a row of tanks once held the city's most unlikely guardians, live trout. In the 1980s, engineers at SYAAP, the Paris Water Authority, relied on these fish to sound the alarm if anything went wrong with the city's drinking water. Trout are famously picky about their environment. Just a hint of pollution, and they react instantly. If the fish began to struggle, technicians knew there was trouble brewing in the Sainte Anne Reservoir. The system wasn't just for show. Reports from the time describe how operators watched the trout as carefully as any digital gauge. A SIAAP engineer said the trout were both a symbol, nature's sentinel, and a genuine bioindicator. For nearly 2 decades, these silent swimmers protected the taps of millions. By the late 1990s, electronic sensors took over and the trout tanks were phased out. But for a generation, Paris's water safety depended on the quicksilver reflexes of a handful of fish. Above ground, another French obsession was taking shape, one that would transform the nation's roads forever. In the early 1970s, the city of Quimper installed France's first modern roundabout. The idea caught on like wildfire. By 2021, France had more than 52,000 roundabouts, the highest count on Earth, and more than a third of the world's total. Mayors across the country competed to build their own, convinced that these circular intersections reduced accidents and kept traffic flowing. The Ministry of Ecology's statistics show the roundabout boom was no accident. Official policy encouraged their spread, and local pride did the rest. Today, from tiny villages to sprawling suburbs, the French roundabouts are as much a part of the landscape as the baguette. And with so many circles spinning across the map, it is no wonder that the country's traffic signs have a few surprises of their own. Paris, a city with more than 2 million people and over 6,000 intersections, is famous for having almost no stop signs. For years, the only public stop sign in the entire city stood at the exit of a construction depot on Quai Saint-Exupéry. It was more curiosity than command, so notorious for being stolen by pranksters that city officials finally gave up and removed it in 2013. Since then, Parisian drivers rely on a system called priorité à droite, where anyone entering from the right has the right of way unless a sign or light says otherwise. The city's roads department, known as the voirie, insists this minimalist approach keeps traffic moving and cuts down on confusion. Critics argue it's an urban riddle, but accident data show Paris manages just fine without a forest of red octagons. In a city where roundabouts rule and traffic lights do most of the heavy lifting, the stop sign has become an urban legend, one that tourists still ask about, only to be told it's vanished. Meanwhile, a very different relic of French ingenuity survives at the edge of Paris. On the grounds of Mont Valérien, the French army maintains a flock of 150 carrier pigeons, cared for by a handful of military handlers. These birds aren't just for show. They are written into emergency plans as a backup in case digital communications go dark. The pigeons are descendants of birds that once carried messages across battlefields in 2 world wars. Today their loft is a blend of museum and military outpost, with daily feeding routines and the occasional training flight. Army caretakers, some of whom have spent decades with the flock, call the pigeons their living insurance. In an age of satellites and fiber optics, France keeps a feathered contingency on standby, just in case the 21st century suddenly needs a message delivered the old-fashioned way. Even on the quietest August morning, when Paris seems to empty out for summer holidays, the smell of fresh bread drifts through every neighborhood. That is no accident. Since the late 1990s, Paris has enforced a holiday rota for bakeries, coordinated by the Confédération Nationale de la Boulangerie. Every baker must declare their vacation dates in advance, and city officials ensure that at least half of all bakeries stay open at any given time. The system is so strict that in 2017, a baker in Vierzon was fined €3,000 for refusing to close on his assigned week off. For the French, daily bread is a right, not a luxury. The Eiffel Tower, now the symbol of Paris, was never meant to last. Built for the 1889 World's Fair, the tower faced demolition after just 20 years. Gustave Eiffel himself fought to save it, arguing its value as a radio and telegraph relay. In 1909, his efforts paid off. The city granted the tower a new lease on life, turning a temporary showpiece into a permanent icon. Today it stands as a reminder that both bread and bold ideas deserve a place in everyday French life. France's grip on the culinary world is measured in stars, Michelin stars. In 2023, the country boasted around 630 Michelin-starred restaurants, more than any other nation on Earth. Among them, 29 earned the coveted 3-star distinction, a level of excellence that chefs spend their lives chasing. While Japan has surged ahead in recent years with its own culinary powerhouses, scoring 414 starred restaurants and 21 three-star restaurants, France remains the spiritual home of the Michelin Guide. The first edition launched in 1900, and since then, French chefs and restaurateurs have treated a Michelin star as both a badge of honor and a national obsession. Guide editors describe the French dining scene as unmatched in its depth, tradition, and ambition. Whether it is a tiny country inn or a Parisian palace, the pursuit of perfection is relentless. For food lovers, France is not just a destination, it is the gold standard. That is not just pride talking, it is written in the stars. France's wildest realities aren't just relics. They shape daily life, from emergency baguette laws to a city of roundabouts and traffic lights. In a world obsessed with normalcy, these facts remind us, beneath the surface, every country holds surprises that defy expectation. What else seems impossible until you see it up close?